I think there are two names that we should probably take the time to discuss quickly. I would like to have your thoughts on them. Like the ENCE one for me is like an obviously super fascinating conversation.
Yes.
Because it is so particular for Glaive, and again, like for people who are maybe a little bit newer to the game, who was for a while considered the greatest IGL that's ever touched CSGO, all of the majors and trophies with Astralis. Glaive is now joining a team that might have not actually wished for him prior to getting him. Nobody, I'm fairly certain that nobody on ENCE wished for Snappy to leave. It's a no-brainer.
Do you want to know something funny, by the way? I won't claim, because I haven't looked it up, that this is a fact. But I'll tell you what. Google, do a Twitter search on my profile, and I think I was the first person to ever say ENCE should just get Glaive. And I only did it as sort of a like, well, he's over here, and then they need an IGL, and who could they get that actually would be good, but would be cheaper? You know, I just did that, and I tried to come up with a name. Like, I agree. I don't think until Snappy said, I'm definitely going, which is supposedly a done deal, that the Glaive thing was even in anyone's mind. Of course not. By the way, as far as I know as well, Snappy really was, like Nico, thinking about, do I stay, do I go? It was never like all 100%. He was figuring it out. And I'm sure if he wanted to stay, they were more than happy, like, let's make room for him.
Definitely. Now that they get Glaive, it's sort of a strange situation because he comes into a roster that kind of gets him. I'm not saying they're not happy to see him, but he's not like the signing of the year and everyone's like, oh my God, yay, we get Glaive, let's fucking go. No, they lose Snappy, who literally built this project together, got them to the success that they've had. And you could definitely see had a strong hold on that roster, not just strategically, but also mentally, the way all of the players have great words towards Snappy who have played with him as a captain, as a leader of men and all. So now you have Glaive coming in, who not only has to prove himself individually, because I will say the last few months in the Astralis jersey were complicated. Really, I thought he struggled massively individually to get back into the game. Has to catch up on the meta in a new game where he's going to have to put in a tremendous amount of hours if he wants to be, once again, up to point, and has to have 4 other players buy into this project and the Counter-Strike that he wants to play to rally them under one team. And that is such a huge ask for a captain that's trying to get himself a new chapter in his career in esports. I personally think he's in a much more complicated situation than what it might look like, because it looks like it's a no-brainer the way you say it. Like, you ENCE, you get Glaive. Oh my God, both parties are happy. Shake hand, happy ever after. That is not the situation. I think it's much more complicated than that. I think if you're the ENCE players, if you're nerds, if you're Sampayas, why would you not just kind of look around the corner and see like, okay, like, could I go somewhere else now? Do I still believe in this project? Is this the project that's going to get me to the promised land? Or as the ship sailed, now Snappy's gone. I don't know if I believe the vision of this guy. Lucas seems like a great guy. I don't know how I value him. This is such a pivotal moment where I feel like links are fragile in ENCE. And I think Glaive has a much harder task ahead of him than what meets the eye.
Oh, I think it's way harder. I mean, one factor everyone's just ignoring is like Snappy. It's like, they always stressed it. And if you talk Snappy, it's always Snappy and Saw. Well, there's no Saw either. And they brought in Cuban. I don't have a problem with Cuban. I've known him literally for 15 years or something mental like that, right? But I'll tell you what, he hasn't yet done in CSGO what Saw did. Now, that might sound mad because he was the coach of Virtus Pro, but first of all, people forget, he wasn't there when they won the major. He joined in, like, I think, mid-2015 or something like that as the coach. They were a very good team, but I also think if you watch that team, I imagine some of the things he was doing was also like man management and stuff. They were a very unique, idiosyncratic team, and 3 of them were former teammates of his. Like, that's a different kettle of fish entirely, guys. He hasn't just been a general coach out in the world. The Apex project was quite interesting. He brought up some players. He had this run at the major, quite an interesting thing. But other than that, I haven't seen too much. I know he did the little Mad Lions thing briefly, and he had people like JL on the radar there, etc. But this is a different kettle of fish. Yeah, I've just seen what Saw can do. I've seen him do it with 2 different lineups as well. Like, this guy was cooking. So when I look at their team, I don't know what the connection between Cuban and Glaive is. Like, I'll tell you, for example, if you go watch the Reflections interview I did with Cuban a few months ago after the major, he explains, and this has always been the way that the Virtus Pro guys think, Maniac, they are the most extreme ones on the idea there aren't roles. They actually believe, Snacks has said it publicly, and that's what they believe. They think it's more like you have, like, I think Snacks once said something like, it's like football. You have like forwards, defenders, and like, I don't know, fucking leader or something like that, you know. And then his vision was you should be able to do all these roles. Now, I will say, Snacks, I did see you attempt to do a different role in mouse spots that one time. Yeah, I think you should come to my side, mate. If you agree roles exist, we can give you a break for that one. If they don't exist, that's not a great look. I'm just saying that. So the reason I bring this up, though, is think about this maniac. So we're going from what, in theory, and even in Western Wolves, he was actually a very particular IGL, if people don't know, Glaive was. We're going from what seems to be the most structured, systems-based IGL, and we're pairing with someone who doesn't believe roles exist. Ooh! Mate, that could be genius. That could be a fucking nightmare. That might be chalk and cheese. And also, the real joke, people have made the joke, but I'd make the other one. They all make the joke that, like, you know, Glaive can always say to Cuban, like, I beat you or whatever. It's like, no, here's the other thing. I'll tell you a little spicy detail. The statute of limitations has passed, boys. I won't say who. Let's just say, I mean, I said it in the Taz interview. I have had Virtus Pro players who, let's just say, in the very recent vicinity of that Atlanta loss to Astralis, where they were telling me that I must agree with them that that was a fluke and that they were the better team and they should have won the tournament. That's why when they then won that DreamHack Vegas right afterwards, they were like, see, it was all bullshit. We were the best. I'll tell you what, that actually means to me, like, I've always thought what happens is, you remember this, before the Astralis era when they won the 3 majors, when they just won the 1, there were people who thought that was a fluke. And there were people who still thought, I don't really fuck with Astralis that much. I prefer SK Gaming. I prefer Virtus Pro.
Right.
These are the men's men. You know, these are the guys with balls. And I tell you what, if you give them enough chances, they'll always beat the nerds with the tactical booking on. Oh, the flash. I don't need the flash, mate. I'll peek. You know, Bialy just fucking holds and kills 3 people when he comes through the door. I think that's like a quite different paradigm almost you're coming from. So that's, as far as I can tell, Snappy and Saw were like this. I don't know where the fuck Cuban and Glaive are. So there's another factor, like the guy who's helping Glaive, who knows where his head's at? And then you look at the players he's got. Mate, this is the joke is, this is why I love that Glaive did it. This is a bit like a phase team that Carrigan could take over. You're not coming with all the established project. Like, some Pius is pretty good, but I don't know what he's going to work like with Glaive's system. Nertz is a monster on T side. But I tell you what, he drops off half in big games sometimes too. Goes disappear. Diha is probably the most notorious one that everyone on ENCE will tell you he's the most important player. He's the best player. But man alive, does he just have whole tournaments where he's just bang chilling? Like, guys, and then as far as I can tell, the one that actually does seem like for real, his job, it's where he comes from in the world, mate. Madden just wakes up and he goes, right, put my hard hat on, lunch pail, go to the thing, putting the bricks up. Like, he just does his job, mate. But I tell you what, that won't win you tournaments. That's the base that the others have to perform from. So I agree with you. Look, this is what's awesome about this move. As people who love narratives, it's so delicious. It could be everything. It could even tie into Glaive, the GOAT discussion, what's going on. Should Snappy have left? Can Glaive win another major? By the way, there's one you haven't even thought of, guys. We all said Glaive wins 4 majors. What if Glaive now has a chance at 5 majors? Now the conversation's back on. Or, mate, what if it goes the other way? Now, look, if you asked me, I would say it like this, and I'm not being a lawyer. The greatest in-game leader in CSGO history is Glaive. But the best in-game leader in CSGO history is Carrigan. Now, there's a difference. Because great is things like also influence in the scene, what you've accomplished. To be a great man, you have to accomplish great things, right? I don't think Carrigan accomplished as many great things as Glaive. But if you asked me, you don't know the players. Which in-game leader are you picking to win a game to live? Oh, I'm taking Carrigan all day long, mate. Look, admittedly, in 2018, we're both dead now. And I would have gone to the grave, maniac. You know me. I picked existence for about 6 pages where he kept filming. I stand by my boys. You know what I mean? I've gone down with the ship like a good captain. But I have to, so when I look at it, everything's at play with this movie. It looks like it's not. It looks like it's just a little move from ENCE. Just test it out. This is so spicy, this move.
I know, because if you're a Glaive fan, you could also argue back that, hey, Glaive was never put in a position as Carrigan did to actually prove he can.
Yes.
And it's a valid argument, but now you're in. I cannot help but think that all of the conditions that need to synchronize in order for this project to be successful is like a fucking Swiss watch. It's like it's intricated to so many levels for this to actually truly
but here's the other thing.
Something great.
You nailed it before. I'm not going to let any Glaive hater, if this team succeeds, go, you just walked into the team. They were already good. No. I agree with you. If this works, just like I've given Carrigan credit for international, this must mean Glaive can do other things. He can work with different players, and he must have stepped his game up in that one regard. He gone from a different side. It has to be, I'll give him a lot of credit if he does it with this.
No, 100%, because there's so many sort of challenges that he's got to overcome. First of all, we don't know if Glaive knows what Counter-Strike he wants to play currently. He's coming back from inactivity for a while.
Yep.
The game, if you compare from now to 6 months ago, the game has never evolved that fast.
No.
We're literally talking about a new game. It's literally a new game. So I'm not opening open door here. So Glaive, we don't even know if he knows the Counter-Strike he wants to play. He's got to figure that out first. And that in itself is not a small task to do. It's a huge task to do. At the same time, he's going to have to convey these ideas to a team and co-create together with a team a Counter-Strike to play together. Do these players want to play with him? Do these players buy into the argument? And in extent, so do you get the best out of these players? Because it's obviously unfair to just say, it's going to be about Glaive and what he can do or not. No, it's not just about Glaive. That's very unfair. It's a reductionist way to look at it. You have to have players, Nerds and Sampayas are the two very obvious candidates, who are going to have to prove time and time again that they are on the upwards trajectory, that they are becoming better and more consistent players. They can step up in high moments. And they're going to have to prove, they're going to have to do something that all of the great players of the history of Counter-Strike have been able to do, which is to perform in an environment that maybe isn't what you were desiring for it to do. And that in itself is, it might be a bit complicated to hear, but I'll put it again simply. Maybe they're not within the team that they wanted right now. Maybe
tell you what, do this.
Snappy.
Give people an example. Think historically. Is there a case of where someone impressed you? They obviously weren't in the ideal scenario, but they could play, they could perform.
I mean, I think obviously Nico is an example. Whereas throughout teams where he didn't necessarily have the people he wanted next to him, he has kept on delivering. Yes. You could make the argument that, hey, the Vitality guys were put with the decision to bring in the Danish trio in there. They had to deal with that, and they had to come up with a way to work together and be good at it. Not every player is capable through adversity and in teams that they not really necessarily wished for to actually deliver. And that's a new test. That's a new test for Sampayas. That's a new test for Nerds. I can empathize with you guys. Maybe you would wish for Snappy to stay. Maybe you could imagine yourself in a different jersey now. But can you still perform now? Because you are a professional player. And your goal is to be the best every damn time. Can you deliver with Glaive? Can you help him out as well? Because they're going to have a much more participating approach. Like, Glaive is not going to come on and say, okay, listen, guys, this is how we play Counter-Strike now, boys. If you look at the blackboard over here, I'm going to show you this is how. No, that's not what's going to happen. Glaive is going to say, okay, guys, how do you like to play the game? Like, what is it that you're good at? What is it that you feel like? These are some of my principles. Can we build something together? Because if Glaive just absorbs Snappy's identity, he's going to disappear. That's not going to work out. You cannot just say, send me the PDF from Snappy, I'll listen, and then I'll have the exam on Monday, and I'll tell you everything about it. Yeah. That's still not going to work. So there has to be sort of a compromise, so meeting in between where it's like, this is what we like to do, this is the Counter-Strike I want to play, and whatever recipe that ends up being, do we believe in it? And again, as you said, from a narrative standpoint, that's like, it's so interesting.
Here's the thing, I'll juice it a bit more. Are you ready? I'm going to baste the turkey at this point in time, get those juices really going and get that flavour, the seasoning. I'm going to give you two more angles. Because again, I save them, mate. I don't all blow them all on Twitter. I blow them sometimes. Here's two angles people haven't thought of. In my reflections series with Zonic, what's perfect about the timing of when I did it is he's taking shots at every motherfucker. He's like fucking at the end of Scarface, like, say hello to my little friends. He was taking shots at Vitality because they want to reduce his salary. He was taking shots at fucking Astralis because of the way they ran the team at the end. He was taking shots at Device because of the way Device left and went to NIP. He even took shots at Glaive because what did he reveal? He revealed that rumour I had heard and said years ago was true. I heard Zonic in a period in the scrims would IGL and then Glaive would just frag. And he was the coach IGLing, and so it allowed Glaive to test his fragging in those spots. Oh no, Zonic went one further. He said since mid-2018, that's when Go to Astralis began, he called 50% of practices, right? That's a little thing about Glaive no one's thought about before, is it? Shall I tell you how many practices Robban calls for? Zero. He might input something, but he's not caught. By the way, no coach is doing that as far as I know. That's actually that's why I give props to Zonic, although I do think he did it as a shot. He sort of did it, go, listen, Glaive, and know your place. I was doing more than people know. He was doing a bit of that, right? But then the other angle is this. This is more subtle. He mentioned, because one thing people don't know about Glaive's rehabilitation is it all came under Zonic. Before that, the reason why they gambled on Glaive is because if you're going to kick Carrigan, it's only Glaive and MSL At the time, Snappy wasn't a relevant fact. They're the only two people you can pick. And if you don't fuck with MSL, and a couple of them thought like, Glaive, it's just because he's been in the wilderness. He made his mistakes, but he's gonna understand now. That was the last chance saloon for Glaive. That was his way to prove himself. But I've heard, even in Astralis, he's a spicy character, mate. I've heard he can have like fights with people. You know that thing about where like this that story where he was gonna like fist fight fucking Cadian over like the trash talk or whatever. Glaive's not he's not the chill guy he sometimes gives off this impression of it. He's really intense. I've heard, and Zonic said it in this interview, that in Astralis, Zonic was the captain and Glaive was the in-game leader. Now, you know the difference between that and the way a fan doesn't, mate.
Definitely.
So there's another question. You come into this team, right? This is where I've done all the interviews, boys. When I did my interview with Taz, a couple of years ago, he used to play with Diha. And he says Diha wouldn't listen and essentially had him kicked. So Diha's spicy. I know he looks like a lovable grandma. I'm just who I am, mate. Think of what he looks, listen. He looks like he has the perm. He's got the spiky hair. It's like... Listen, I can't be anything other than I am, maniac. I am a tiger has its stripes, you know what I mean? So he looks like a fucking lovable character. I've heard he's a bit spicy there. He doesn't fuck around. Son Pius, are you ready? Earlier in this year, at the beginning of this year, there was a story, you probably heard it behind the scenes, that I think it was kind of ENCE or something where they like bombed. There was a story that people say that Son Pius had a diva moment. And that he came to his teammates and he goes like, I feel like fucking Device in this team. When Device was like carrying Astralis and they were all trash. And apparently he had like a diva moment like that. Now, I will say, fair play, Son Pius. When they got the team together, you fucking carried, mate. Like, I'm not hating on you like some of the people who told me that story were. Then I keep going through the lineup. Nerds is incredibly young. He only joined earlier this year. He's barely played that tier 1. By the way, he hasn't done a run at a major. What are we talking about here? So if you're Glaive, you're not just walking into these are pieces and you're not playing FIFA. You're also interacting with human beings, getting buy-in from them, finding out how do they want to play. Do they know how they want to play? Man alive. This becomes like more and more complex. It's not just a fucking Rubik's Cube. If people don't know, I found out something very sad recently. Do you know that it's actually very easy to do a Rubik's Cube, Maniac? Did you know this?
I do not know.
Oh, I'm going to blow everyone's mind now. It's really sad. You know what's incredibly impressive when you don't know how to do it? You see them, you're like, it's a wizard. Apparently, there's a literal system where you go sort of like, you just go like down, right, down, right, down, right. You do like two more. When you do this motion, that's why they just do that. Eventually, it just solves the cube. Apparently, it's just like a motion thing. It's not even that your brain, I know, I've ruined the whole thing because it was like an insane magic trick, wasn't it? When you saw people do it in 3 seconds, you're like, oh my God, he must be like some sort of alien. Apparently, you just get really fast at doing this thing, right? It eventually solves the cube. And apparently, it's luck because it depends where the places are at the beginning as to how fast it goes to the... I know.
Find a new metaphor.
Listen,
now.
I've ruined Christmas, which is definitely real for everyone. For whatever might listen. I meant for Falcons because they didn't get the gifts that they wanted. But anyway, whatever. So the point I'm making is like, I think this is a way trickier. This actually low key. Whereas we're talking it up, this sounds like one of the hardest projects in CS.
Yeah, I agree.
Because if you didn't have the good players, you wouldn't even have the pressure. So this is like almost like it's like he's min-maxed having a chance to win with the most possible things that can go wrong.
I know.
This is crazy.
That's how I see it too.
Yeah, this is crazy.
That's how I see it. And I would have a completely different point of view if this was Kerrigan who decided to step down from FaZe joining ENCE, because everyone would be like, holy shit, Kerrigan, yes, we're going to do this together. It's going to be amazing. This is different because you have a player that is still that's trying to prove to himself and to everybody that he's got a second breath, a second sort of chance at the game. So holy hell. Yeah, I think we're going to talk about ENCE quite a whole lot in the future. But
see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.